Hello, lovely people, and welcome back to another episode of Handle Your Lemons. I'm Ray. I'm just here to make life feel a little less lonely. And today I want to talk about reasons that I think everyone should try therapy. Now, before you click away, I'm not saying therapy is necessarily for everyone, but I am saying that everyone should try it. And I think that something that I've really heard in the past year or two of my life is that people are like, oh, like you've made going to therapy your whole personality. Babe, the trauma altered my personality. So if anything, being in therapy has allowed me to get my personality back and has allowed me to be like who I'm actually am and who I'm actually supposed to be versus just like sitting in my trauma brain and just like not letting myself like ever feel safe. And that wasn't necessarily out of like me wanting to stay there. It was more so I didn't know how to get back out. And I think that there's like nothing wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And honestly, if anything, I think asking for help is brave because that means you need someone to like hold your hand and give you the tools that you need to fix it. You know what I'm saying? So, I just hear me out. Here are some things that I think would really resonate if I was sitting with myself again and I was trying to say like, okay, like why would I try therapy? Because everyone's like, oh, like therapy won't help me, therapy won't work for me. I am gonna pause you right there and say if you haven't tried it, like you don't super get to say that. That's just like asinine. Like that's like saying you're not gonna try new medications because you don't know if they'll work. That's like saying you're not going to go to the gym because you don't think you'll lose weight. Like, just not the vibe. You know what I'm saying? So, hear me out on that, okay? I think that every single person has trauma, and therapy, especially talk therapy, is an excellent tool to work through some of that. And something that I've learned in therapy that I thought was really interesting was trauma isn't only what happens to you or like around you, trauma is also what doesn't happen to you. So you grew up without a dad, trauma. You never got to have a birthday part. I don't know. Like there's little t and big T trauma, but like I think that there's something really important to be said about the fact that you could have had a great childhood and like your parents could have done the best that they could and there were still things you missed out on and still things that were hard. I mean, I like never had nice skin, so I was bullied. I found out like later in life that half my family wasn't my family. There's a lot of stuff that I think we don't know how to talk about with just like our friends and family. And I think that kind of breaks down to like little t trauma, like, like a car accident, like, I would say is maybe like a small, unless it was like super bad and everything blew up. But I don't know. The point that I'm trying to make is that a lot of things that happen we can't just talk about with those around us because unfortunately they're not going to be able to like be unbiased and they're also like not going to be able to probably give us the tools that we need. Like the average person isn't going to be able to give the tools that you need to like work through those things. Number two, I think that venting is healthy and keeping everything inside is just like stuffing a bottle until it blows up, and that's not the way to deal with things. A lot of people do that. Like, that person in your life that's like super calm until they're not. That's because they let a million little things like upset them because they didn't know how to handle it, and then they just exploded. And that's just like not a healthy way to deal with things. I think therapy for me personally has also given me this space to talk about the things and the people and the events in my life that are happening with like an outside perspective. You know what I mean? Like if I'm talking about like a conflict between me and a friend, she doesn't know the friend. So talking to her about it gives me a good sense of like, am I overreacting? Am I handling this incorrectly? Like, am I in the wrong? Because sometimes like we also just need someone else to tell us like, hey, you messed up there. Because, my perspective might be, oh, I handled that situation great, but then I'm talking to her, I'm looking back, I'm like, wait, actually, like, I didn't handle that as well as I could have. And that comes back to, like, being in therapy and, like, again, her giving, like, or the therapist giving you tools to handle things in real time in a better way. I mean, regulating my nervous system has been such a game changer. I used to be like very reactive. I used to like just I don't know. And it's funny because at the time if you had asked me, I'm like, I'm very like emotionally intelligent. I might have been emotionally intelligent, but it doesn't mean I knew what to do with them. And I have a lot of emotions. I'm still very sensitive and I still have really big feelings, but the difference is now is I know how to handle them and I know what it looks like for me to be regulated versus dysregulated. I also know what it means to like approach a situation as it's happening and when I need to be like, okay, like let me take a step back and process this before I do anything about it. And that's a skill. Like that's something I had to learn how to do, aka via therapy, because I didn't know before. I would just like explode and blow up and unfollow people on social media and like I am so sorry if that has ever happened to you by me or someone else. Just know that it was probably not personal. They just didn't know how to handle their emotions. So handling my emotions, venting is a big one. I think that kind of leads into like number 3 is that like for the most part, like even the person raised with the most regulated of family and the most, quote unquote textbook childhood isn't going to come with a full toolbox. Like you have to teach kids how to handle stuff emotionally the same way like if you don't have that, you have to teach yourself how to handle it. And that's a hard, I mean, I'm still working on it. Like I said, I used to be like way more reactive. I'm not so much anymore. If anything, I'm kind of like more, I'm like so regulated that I'm like, things don't bother me. But I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the right toolbox to really figure that out. You know what I mean? Like it took me a year, honestly, of talk therapy for me to be like, okay, what do I need to do in this situation? Because then there was also a point where, it's like she's taught me a couple of things, like, box breathing, EFT tapping. That's changed my life. The way that like exercise or a hot shower releases dopamine, journaling, gratitude mindset, like those were all things that I had to not only learn but learn when to use them. And that was a journey. Like that's not something like you pick up in a day. Like I said, it took me about a year. So if you do try talk therapy, which I think that everyone should, give it more than like a session. Like give it a little bit to like help, you know what I mean? I got really lucky and I hit it off with my therapist fairly quickly. But sometimes like also you might not meet the therapist that like you click with right away. So it's okay to find another one, but I am saying give it a couple sessions. And number 4, oh, okay, this was such a huge one, and this one I'm still kind of working through, but it's getting to know yourself. Like, working with a therapist has allowed me to, like, really uncover my desires, my likes, my dislikes, because she's helped me to shed, like, my people pleasing. And with her, it's a space where I can just say, like, this is what I want without a fear of, like, anyone else having their input or their judgments or what they think I should do. And so that's allowed me to like know myself on such a deep level. And now I see that the most when I think about my relationships with others because I don't settle anymore. I don't like I don't hang out with boys who breadcrumb me. I don't hang out with girls that try to marry me on date 2. I don't keep friends that, talk poorly of me or don't support me. Like the relationships that I have now are so good and so like rooted in a strong foundation because I know myself intimately enough to be present and intimate with them in a way that creates a space that's like safe for both parties. I mean, nobody's perfect and like obviously like I'm still a pretty forgiving person, but like I'm just no longer willing to allow certain things. And that's because I know what my boundaries are now and I know myself well enough. Whereas before, I was just like honestly desperate for love and like desperate in this like place of like I had like a lot of abandonment wounds to work through, which I didn't even know I had, but the abandonment wound, that's a whole separate episode. But like now I can be like, okay, like that's not right, that's not good behavior. We're gonna do conflict management, but if not, like I'm gonna move on. And that's never a skill I've had before. Ever. So, and like even like people, like I would be in relationships, I would break up with the people, and then thinking that that would make them, oh my gosh, so toxic when I think about it, but that thinking that would make them like fight for me, and then I would like be like, wait, what do you mean you don't want to get back together? And I did that like from high school up until like my most previous relationship. Like it just was, I don't know, but that just comes back to like not knowing myself and not knowing the boundaries, and also this like fear that I had to work through that like everybody was gonna leave, and that if I didn't, make this person stay, nobody would. So blah 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 blah. I say all of that to say that like you have to get to know yourself, and like I think that therapy is such a good way to learn about who you are, because she'll like ask questions that provoke things where I'm like, I never even would have thought about that. Like that's so crazy that like you thought about that. But like they see you differently. You know what I mean? Like they're not your friend, they're not your parent. They're someone who's like there and who has all the tools under the gosh darn sun to help you. And there's just like no better feeling than working through something and then like feeling yourself be more grounded. Like I genuinely think about who I was even just a year ago. Oh my gosh, like and therapy like saved my life, if I'm being honest with you. I started therapy for like a really specific reason, like something really specific that I wanted to work through. And even though like that situation was really hard, I'm so glad that it happened, because I don't know that I would have started therapy otherwise. And in that, like my life ended up being saved, because I had really, really bad, really toxic coping skills, very insecure, like was so lost in like pleasing others that I didn't even really know who I was, like at my core. And there's just like no better feeling than that. So, again, I think that you should try therapy. I use a virtual platform called Tava Health. Check it out and let me know how it goes.